now we're going to talk about the internet.
Talk because tube times and I have a stupidly long journey home. So anyway, we've been talking about horror games. They're fun, exciting, hooray, everyone loves being scared.
Too truncated. I'm
now going to be really depressing and talk about the internet, which is not a fun kind of scary. So yeah, my talk is why the internet scares me. And yeah, I'm Laura, I'm a trans woman that writes about games on the internet. As you might have been aware of in the last couple of months, that's not always a nice thing to be. Women in the games industry are not always the favourite people of the internet, so yeah, here's my talk on the internet. The internet's great, so my job wouldn't exist without the internet. I wouldn't know any of the gamers I know without the internet, wouldn't be at VideoBrains. VideoBrains, everything like that, all great. However, let's talk about the bits of the internet that are not so great. So, point number one. The internet scares me when it assumes that I have a lot of power that I don't have and attacks me as such. So I'm going to show you very quickly. Here's an article that was written about me last year. Blah, blah, blah. Long story short as to why this article was written. There was a website that decided I controlled the Jewish-owned media, and as such decided to get 4chan to attack me based on that. It's a wonderful website, this website. I looked at the top two of their headings are the Jewish problem and the race war. So that should tell you something about the kind of websites that exist on the internet to harass people. Very, obviously very sensible websites with very thought out logic that always think through what they're accusing you of. But yeah, internet, they can come up with claims. It can be really scary. That's not fun. So, really rattling through this, aren't I? Right. This is the obvious one, not mentioning any hashtags whatsoever. This has existed before any of those. That hashtag's the name for something that's existed for a long time, but the internet scares me because online harassment mobs are a thing, and they can use the internet to harass you in person. So, really skipping through this. People harassing me on the internet. This was the thing that happened last year. Actual harassment that happened in person was not a problem. The internet is fucking scary because when you get a large community of people that are usually disorganized and give them a goal, they can really get themselves organized, and that's scary. I'm going to kind of skip through these. The unbelievable pleasure in the art of harassment. Now, this is probably the scariest thing about, that I find personally about the internet as a tool for harassment. And I'm going to show up the lovely Jimmy Russ. This was a recurring character when I got harassed last year, who he came on with many various forms. If you haven't picked up on his name, Jimmy Russ is a play on Russell Jimmy's, and it's like, oh, it's someone who has very clearly thought, put effort into being clever about the fact that they exist to cause people upset. And this person appeared with varying different proxy accounts that all had the same name. And this is the thing about harassment that scares me. It's I can understand someone sending a one-off harassment threat. That's a bad thing to do, right? But the kind of person that puts effort into thinking, okay, I'm going to harass people with a name that sounds like an actual name but is a pun connected to the art of making people feel uncomfortable. That shows a sense of comfortable, active enjoyment in harassment, which is a weird thing that, the more I think about that's what scares me about this guy. It's not the actual threats he's sending, it's the fact that he's clearly enjoying it so fucking much, which, the wonderful thing about the wall of anonymity that people on the internet have is that when they decide that, hey, we're going to harass someone, they can really have fun with it. And that's a thing. So, anyway, continuing on. Okay, things about the internet when people in the games industry get harassed that are really weird, I'm going to show this off, is attempts to defend someone who is being harassed can end up putting more harassment in their field of view. So, great example here. Another example with Jimmy Russ, because Jimmy Russ was a bit of a recurring character, but you see on here, if you can see it in its lovely blurry screenshot, which, long story short why that happened, but people were attempting to be defensive of someone being harassed, in this case me, and sort of doing the whole, okay, well, we'll say to this person, oh no, don't do that, you're obviously a horrible person, and he would reply. And the problem you get here is that every time that he replies to someone, that's another example of, oh, okay, I get to see his face in my timeline again with whichever account he's using now. Once again, get to see harassment in my feed. And it's this wonderful self-perpetuating cycle of the internet as a scary tool for harassment, because even in attempts to fight the harassment, that can perpetuate the cycle of harassment getting into people's field of view. So it's very difficult to silence harassment. Twitter's not very good at it. Reporting people doesn't actually work in the slightest. So yeah, wonderful things about harassment. Yeah, the scary thing when people dismiss harassment en masse because it's not important compared to real issues. And perfect example of it here. In the grand scheme of things, you're insignificant. What makes you think this is more important than actual world news, you twat? So, great example there of your issue you're having. You're being harassed by hundreds of thousands of people. That's not important because there's a war going on somewhere in the world. So you know you're very insignificant. And like those are the kind of messages that like they make you feel very small, very insignificant, very scared when you're being harassed. It's the sort of thing that no matter what the case is, and no matter how many blatant excuses for harassment are going around in front of your face, these are the kind of people that make you start doubting yourself, that make you start thinking, maybe I need to stop asking for help, maybe I need to stop like making a big deal out of this. Sure, I'm being harassed, but it's not that important in the end. And it's the thing that gets people to stop asking for help when they're being harassed. And it's a horrible logic, because by this logic, surely we shouldn't care about anything in our lives other than the inevitable heat death of the universe, because that is the most important thing. Nothing's more important than that. Why are we caring about anything that's not the heat death of the universe? So, yeah, that's a thing. Those people are horrible. We need to find a way to deal with those. Rushing through, skip past that one, let's have a look. Yeah, I mentioned this earlier, so disorganized internet coming together with the sole goal of targeting harassment. So, harassment is one of the very few things on the internet that can get large groups of people talking with a singular voice, and that's really scary. When you look at Twitter as a specific example, people on Twitter, usually it's all very discordant. Where you get big harassment campaigns is where people on Twitter decide to alert more long-form places on the internet that I'm not going to mention, but we all know what they are, and say, hey, let's have a long-form conversation about how to harass this one person. And then you get, I'm just going to show an image. I got sent this image 700 times in one day, and this is like my perfect example of like, that's what targeted harassment is. 700 people sending that in the space of a day. That's people who are usually disorganized being like, oh, let's get together for the good of a goal. So the internet's a scary thing. Right, why am I still using the internet? Almost at the end of my highly depressing talk. The internet. I've been talking about it for a while. It's really bad. Oh, why do I use the internet? Because it's lovely. Because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the internet. I wouldn't have my job. I wouldn't have met Jake, who's running this evening. I wouldn't have done any of the wonderful things I've done. I wouldn't get to have a life that I live in somewhere that is not part of the big gaming community, but every day I spend my days talking to gamers and getting to talk about the things I love. And that's because the internet is a great thing, even if it's fucking scary. So, there we go, that's my highly depressing talk, hooray!